Hi, I'm Chris with Sights on Target Trading. Today I'm going to talk with you about locking devices for firearms. This is kind of one of my pet peeves. I don't have children myself, but I know personally of a few children that were injured in firearm accidents, mainly because they were not locked up. Safes are probably the way you want to go. I highly recommend getting a gun safe, not only to protect your firearm from children, but to protect it in the event of theft as well. There's some high quality firearm safes on the market. You can pick one up for around $100 US, and it'll bolt right to the floor, and it's a fairly decent safe. The one I use is a little bit more than that, but it holds more, and it's just a pistol safe. It's not a stand-up, rifle safe. Besides your safes, there are other firearm safety devices that are geared to, prevent children from having access, and it also prevents accidental discharges. Something like this is made by the Club, which I believe is the same company that makes the vehicle club. This is a great locking device on some firearms, not on all. The way this is set up is this pin is supposed to go behind the trigger. So when you pull the trigger, it hits this pin and it can't go anywhere. Many people nowadays, they buy a safety device like this, put it on the trigger, and leave it like that. But I'm going to show you that even with something like this on, if it's not used properly, it's just as damaging as not locking your firearm up at all. So to do this, I'm going to demonstrate with a single action firearm. I'm going to make sure this is unloaded because I am going to be pulling the trigger. And it is unloaded. As you can see, there's not a lot of room behind this trigger to put this pin. It can be done, but not very easily. This is the way it's supposed to be locked. The pin is now behind the trigger, so there's no way I can pull the trigger because when the trigger is pulled, it's going to hit the pin. Not a lot of people do this though. Most of the people that I instruct in my classes just put the like this. You just put the pin in front. And half the problem with this is, being a single action revolver, as you can see, the hammer is up, but there's no room now for me to actually put the pin behind the trigger. I actually have to cock it, and it would have to be almost like a half cock to be able to get the pin there. The way many people do it though is they just put the pin in, close it up. Now right now, this is locked, but I'm going to demonstrate to you that even though it's locked, it can still be shot. You could still load it. I have full access through the loading gate to load this firearm. And now it's locked. I can still shoot it. This is it's a great safety device. Like I said, if it's used right, this is used incorrectly. And it's just as damaging if you didn't use one at all. Let me just take this off and I'll show you a couple more things. The way you would want to lock this firearm up is there's really no way to do it without removing the cylinder. You could put a trigger lock on it like that if you want to keep the hammer in a cocked position. I personally don't like to do that, so I would recommend on this is actually, let's do this for all purposes, is actually taking the cylinder out, and putting a cable lock through the frame. Now you're not going to be able to get the cylinder back in to fire it, so this firearm is safe, and you can store the cylinder in the box or in a bag in your gun safe, or you're not going to be able to shoot it without the firearm, so you really don't have to lock that up. That's my preference. I just keep this one actually in the manufacturer's box because it also came with a .22 Magnum cylinder, and this is for .22 long rifle. So I put it all back in the box and I keep a cable lock on it. And that would consider this firearm safe. Another firearm that you wouldn't want to use this on is a Smith & Wesson J-frame. These are pretty expensive grips, and I found that a type of safety device like this has a tendency to wear out your grips if it's put on grasping and touching your grips. Like I said, this is the Crimson Trace laser grip, and I really don't want to have it chewed up by the Club locking device. So once again, I'll put a cable device through the frame and put it in the safe. Once again, if somebody broke into the safe or if I forgot to lock the door, it's still locked. Same thing with a semi-automatic. You put it right through the handle, down the side, and this is safe. These are the ways you really want to lock your firearms up. These, I find, are more suited to long guns. Just the trigger is set in a better position for it. The last locking device that I'm going to show you is, once again, on my Crimson Trace Smith & Wesson Model 642. If you see right above the cylinder release latch, there is almost like a hole. And what that is a lock. You put your key in and it comes, the factory will send you 2 of these keys in a bag, but you can't actually pull a trigger now. This firearm is locked. The only way you can unlock it is by putting the key in and unlocking it, and make sure it's unloaded, and now you can pull the trigger. That's an option you can use to store your firearm. But the main thing you want to remember is firearm ownership is a responsibility. If you have kids, lock them up. Kids are going to be able to get into anything. And even go one step further than that. I keep all of my keys, with the exception of this, because I don't really use that locking device, on one single key ring. One is on my car keys that I carry with me daily, and the other one is I gave to a close friend of mine, and he keeps my set of keys in his safe. And I do the same thing. I have his spare keys in my safe. So if I were to lose my keys, I can still call my friend up and say, listen, I need to get my keys out, or he can do the same. That way there's no possibility of the kids finding, my spare key rings and opening, my gun safe and having access to my firearm. The same thing with theft. If thieves find keys like this and they find your firearms, they're going to have full access to your firearms. So when you're starting to store your firearms, just make sure that you come up with some sort of plan of how you're going to keep them safe, how you're going to keep kids away from them, and what you're going to do to make sure that your firearms don't have unauthorized access by people. So if you have any questions, leave me a comment, I'll answer you. But just remember, just make sure that when you are deciding how you want to keep your firearms safe, make sure you read the manufacturer's instructions and understand that something like this you can still fire a firearm with if it's not used correctly. So this is Chris for Sights on Target Training.